Hello, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. I hope all of you know that you live in heaven here in Ireland. I adore all of you Irish. I call you the Lebanese of Europe. You are as crazy as us, the Lebanese, as good liver, drinker, eater. But my subject today is not about that. It was called Food in a War Zone, right? So I compiled the list for you of important ingredients, tips, utensils for food in a war zone. I hope you have, you can write what's important because you never know when it will happen, so you have all what it needs. And I think you need absolutely nothing. You just need resilience and a sense of survival that each and every one of us have. The title you gave to this talk is like really wonderful. I look like a hero. But I'm not, I'm definitely not. And everyone who is in a problem never chose to be in a problem. It's just about how to survive a problem. Whether it is war, whether it is my mother that is sick, my kid that is sick, my house that has issues, so how to make out the best of what we have. And unfortunately, sometimes what we have is like small problems and like we complain about it. And sometimes what we have are bigger problems. Like, I'm just saying how wonderful the place is here, I have one of the most wonderful rooms I ever stayed in at Ballymaloe house. I'm very grateful for that. And if I can imagine for a second, if I go back to the room and I don't find my stupid toothbrush, can each and every one of you think about that, how pissed you will be? Or if you go back to the place and you don't find the whole place anymore. Or if you just cannot go back to this place. And this is not a joke. This is reality that happens for someone that we will call later on, is he or is she a migrant or a refugee? And this is the reality of these people. This is the reality of war, and this is the reality of injustice in the 21st century. We fight for justice on so many levels. Unfortunately, we're still fighting for justice on very, very elemental and basic human needs and human rights, even in the 21st century. Food in a war zone is very easy. It's just about survival. Food in a wartime in Lebanon was just about how to have petrol, to move, oil, to be always able to move, and how to have bread. We used to queue for hours just to get bread, and the same wheat bags that used to contain the wheat had to contain later on sand for it to be used as protection. So, food in a wartime is not the best story maybe, but what can we do out of it? How can we get out of war? All of the images that are running behind me are solutions that we can find after wartime. I was born in 1969, war started in 1975, so I nearly know nothing before. I was like 5 or 6 years old when the war started, and I remember nothing of the before wartime. And for me, when I was a kid, war was not bad, because I had no responsibility at all. It was my parents' problem and not mine. And for me, when it was like hard war, we don't go to school anymore, which is great. So it was rather a good thing than a bad thing. But then again, when war ended in 1990, what are we going to do of it? Lebanon is a very small country. It's like 200 kilometers long by 50 kilometers large. Very, very small country with such a diverse geography, climate, food production, and agriculture. But this very tiny country was divided into like 5 or 10 or 20 different parts, and no one could go from one part to another until 1990, where it was like, okay, like all of it is for you. What do we do out of it? Do we continue fighting? Do we continue looking at the difference between us, political or religious differences, which were a reason for us to kill each other? As if there was one God, this God or the other God, who asked other to kill people. Or a religion that asks other to kill people, or a difference that can be built, on skin color, on politics, or on religion. So in 1990, the whole country was opened to all of us. What do we do of it? How can we get together when for such a long time we were like not only separated, we were enemies? What can bring us all together? Well, it was very simply, the land is really bringing us all together. The product of the land, the agriculture, and the cuisine that we make out of it. You know, an Irish stew is not Catholic or Protestant, I think. It's just the product of this country. Religion came after the people and after the country and after the land. There's something much older than that. I don't think hummus is Palestinian or Israeli. It's just the product of this country, of this land. And countries and politics came much later. If they came like 50 or 100 or 200 years ago, I think the land and the people of the land are much older and much more important than that. So how can we celebrate the land? How can we celebrate its people, the agriculture, the product of the land, and the food that we make out of it? I'm a son of farmers, and in 2004 I had to do what I had to do, so I created a farmers market. The farmers market was not just about, you know, selling wonderful potatoes and tomatoes and great lettuce. It was mainly a common ground, a common project between all of these different people. How can we look to similarities beyond differences? If I'm Christian or Muslim and you're different, why do we need to talk about our differences? Let's just keep them aside and let's get all together around the common project without being the same, by being different, but by coming together around a common ground. And these were the pictures that you were seeing of people from all over the country coming together around a common project. Every Saturday morning, bringing the best of their land to the city center of Beirut, bringing the rural to the urban, and sharing the best of the land with the people. We started the farmers market in 2004. In 2007, it was like, why do we have to bring only the producer from rural to urban? Why can't we go to the areas of production? So we created regional food festivals where we would go back to each village and celebrate the wealth of the village. Celebrate tomato in a village, cherry in another village, fish in a fishing port. And during these days that we called food and feast festivals, we would have like different activities, and one of them would be obviously having a good lunch, like the wonderful festival we're having today. But this lunch would be cooked not by anyone, but the good home cooks of that village. Because agriculture is transformed into a cuisine, into a regional, local cuisine that speaks the best of a land, of history, and of tradition better than anything else. There's no better expression of people, of their history, of their tradition, than the cuisine itself. Lebanese are 5 million in Lebanon, 15 million abroad. They didn't take their tradition as of costume or architecture or music. They took none of that. They only took with them tabbouleh and kibbeh. Just like the Irish people, they took their drink and they took their food with us, and this is what speaks the best of us. So for me, agriculture and mainly cuisine is not about, you know, an Epicurean approach to it. Is it good? Is it bad? How many stars is it? You know, how fancy it is. It is how much does it tell me of a place, of people, of their root, of their land, of their history, and of their tradition. These lunches in the food festival started to having like a great success. So it was like, why do we need to wait one time a year to go eat this village food? Why can't we have it in a more easy way, you know, and reachable way, and on a daily basis? So this is when we created tawle, which means the table. So we come to the kitchen table to eat with mom, and it's every day a different woman from a different village who would come and cook the typical cuisine of her region or of her village, offering like 10 to 15 different dishes, and telling her story through the cuisine. So this is how tawle was created in Beirut, like for cooks coming from all over the country, telling their stories through their cuisine. And later on, we created like regional tawles, regional communal kitchens in different parts of the country, where each kitchen tells the story of the region itself. After that, it was about supporting the farmers and the cooks and doing better what they were doing. And then it was like, why do we have only to support our own group, our own family? Why can't we go a little bit outside of it and look at the neediest cases? This is where we started working with Palestinian refugees who were in Lebanon since more than 70 years and brought nothing with them from their original country but their own cuisine. So how to tell my story through how to redraw the map of my country through the typical food and produce of Palestine. Then arrived the Syrian refugees, and it was the same, how to develop catering menus where we empower this woman in giving them an income-generating activity through the simple things that they do every day, which is like cooking for their kids and their family, and they think they are nothing, and they do nothing, and they know nothing. And in fact, you are wonderful mothers, you are wonderful women, and you can do a great life and have a great sense of being, through what you are and through what you're doing. So working with Palestinian refugees, with Syrian refugees, with migrant domestic workers, on war zones in some part in Lebanon, like in Tripoli, and always, trying to do conflict resolution in a very indirect way. Let's just get together, you like gardening? I like gardening too. Let's just do gardening. We were enemies yesterday. The first day is going to be very, very hard and tough, and both of us want to kill each other. And little by little, we will discover that both of us have the same problems, the same fears, the same expectations. And we will discover that we are totally the same. So better work together than against each other. So food in a war zone is all of these issues and problems. But how can we change it? How can we transform it into something else? How can we make the best out of what we have? How can we empower people? How can I have a reason to be and to exist? How can I gain back pride and recognition? When I look at different refugees in Europe, I'm trying to work in Istanbul and in Berlin with Syrian refugees. And the most important thing I'm always repeating is these people don't only need jobs. They don't only want, to be trained to work in a pizza restaurant. They don't only need jobs. First of all, they need recognition for what they are and for their identity. Because if they don't have recognition, it will build up, and someday one of them will do November 13th in Paris or September 11 in New York. So just give recognition to people and not only jobs. And look at the crisis that is today and how people are trying to make out the best of it, and how can we together make the best out of it and turning it into a wonderful and positive things. Thank you.